Hello, and welcome to what is essentially a very free-flowing and new space. I'm Mike, and we have Saqib.
Hi, I'm
Hi,
Saqib.
Saqib.
Hello.
We're not even sure how this is showing up, so I think when I speak, the video goes to me, and then it goes over to Saqib, which is interesting. We're going to play with video formats. But essentially, the insight is what's most interesting and valuable for people is a conversation that some people are having. And so when we're having these conversations just in the office or not in the office anymore, there's interesting insights and stories to tell. And, oh, hey, I read this book, or hey, I was thinking this thing. And I think that's probably one of the most interesting chunks of value that we can share with others. And so we've decided to just do that and record it. What do you think, Saqib?
I think that's really good, especially with the current situation of working from home. It's a very different situation that our interactions have changed and we suddenly realize that how much we communicate just by being present in a room versus now just doing it over camera, where we feel sort of a little bit disabled at sometimes, for me at least.
Me as well. The way I would describe it, even before this whole thing happened, is doing everything digitally. I've got to force all of my ideas and thinking through this little keyhole. And that's still true. It's frustrating because I've got notes all over here and there's stuff all over this room. And when I'm thinking and communicating with people, I'd like to be able to share the whole canvas, but that's tough. The other thing is, I think just sharing this conversation is kind of a cheat way to recycle where all the value really is, rather than being really explicit about, oh, we are now going to have a meeting with an agenda. That's crazy. Like you probably, if you reflect on how the last few weeks have been, back-to-back meetings, they're boring. Meetings didn't work in the first place. When are you actually doing the deep thinking and conversations? Probably not. So for us, this is how do we share us just having one of those types of conversations, low expectation, but lots of meandering. And it's sort of recycling. Hey, we're gonna have this interesting conversation anyway. So why not let others listen in on that and then throw tomatoes at us about it later? Yeah. Does that sound about like some fun, Saqib?
Oh, that sounds really, really fun. And well, yeah, we'll see. It's kind of interesting that others are not here, but we can, actually imagine that this is for the others.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's a very interesting.
Well, that's another interesting thing you say that, because it is for others and their value. But I find if I start thinking about that it really is for others, I lose the connection with you, the other person in the conversation, or, it's too stagey, performancy. And yeah, okay, fine, you've set up the background, nice mic, and you've got a microphone that took 10 minutes to get in the right position and all of that. But once that's in place, I want to forget that others are listening, and the irony of that is the most value will come from us just talking about it. So that's probably enough of the meta talk, and so let's just talk about, well, what is this show? I think I covered that. I've got a note here. What is this show? It's really just an experiment. Let's see if it works. We'll iterate on the technology and the format. We do want feedback. Tell us which bits work, which don't. There's a few odd, weird sections that we might throw in here. I might go over to the whiteboard. I might go over there for a minute, and stay tuned, because that might be exciting. It might not be. And I think next is the goals. I'll just touch on what my goal for this series, if we do a series of this kind of thing, it's, yes, sharing conversations, but my goal has become shifting away from being a design consultant to in addition to that. And by the way, my goal used to be, until very, very recently, making machines the slave of man and not the other way around. I want to throw that in there because that's a really important thing. Let's not let the machines, and we're like we're on Zoom calls all day. So we're running just to keep up with the technology, and that's horrible. But I want to shift my focus a little bit further in helping all individuals use SenseMaking as a leadership tool. And so how do we help them as individuals? How do we help all teams as individuals? And this is coaching and all of that soft leadership stuff that we talk about, but also how do we change an organizational structure and an organizational shape to be more mindful and more sensitive to the surroundings? And that sounds like meditation and stuff, but it's not. It's actually a really articulate approach to how the organization needs to be structured. So that's kind of my goal. I've elevated to that point. I want to push the boundaries as much as I possibly can and make people really uncomfortable and sort of become the Willy Wonka or the Tim Burton or something like that of this space. I want people to go, shit, here he comes, right? This is trouble. So that's my goal. And it's all around sense making. And so we might talk about sense making in a bit. But Saqib, tell us a bit about your goal. Why are you investing time and sharing conversations with people?
Oh, well, and this has been like a long time goal of me, except I wasn't able to do this, but lucky that we can do it now. So my goal has always been that I want to make people think. I think that these days, and it's, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of things come from me while I was a lecturer, which was more than 11 years. And I could see that which people are going in industry. So I could see, like during internships, when my students went to the internship, they learned a lot of things, but they also were discouraged to not to think. And that makes me very worried that why are we always, encouraging everything we are so complacent to thinking or thinking differently, but we do have the ability to do that. We just shut them down. So my goal for this is just let's think, let's question what we are thinking. How did the thought come in our mind in the first place? So a lot of thinking, not to be complacent, and thinking, and also to share things that we read, because reading is of no use if we don't use it in our work. The purpose of reading is to use it in somehow, but we read, but we keep going sometimes back to the same ways of doing things. So yeah, so my two goals are to make people think more, and also as well to discuss about the things we read and how can we turn those into actions.
Excellent. I think that's a fantastic goal. I think we're both kind of doing similar things. There's so many books over there on the pile that I've gone through in probably the last 2 years. And the problem is going to the next book and the next book and not bedding down what you've learned in one. I think I need to slow down and reread back to back. Although there are a couple of favorites on sense making that I keep going back to, and there's an audio book that I've listened to 3 times now, so that's kind of a first for me, and that one I'm really enjoying that one. We might cover that topic in another episode, if we do episodes, whatever that means.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a couple of other bits and pieces on content ideas we've got for this. So you already mentioned sort of a book review, or here's some stuff I'm reading and let's discuss that. I'm really interested to hear about what you're reading at the moment, Saqib, but first I'll just run through some other concept ideas. Content ideas. And if anyone does listen to this, we might get one view. Woohoo. Let us know which ones you like, which ones you want more of, what doesn't work. Don't tell us more about your stupid Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance is probably a comment I'll get from people. But book review, maybe a new concept. There might be the OODA loop, or it might be about divergent thinking, or it might be persuasive design, or some other thing. I've got an idea to do maybe a short section on like a how-to or a method review. So a how-to that we've created, 1, 2, 3, here's how you do such and such. Mainly in a consulting format is where I live, where both of us now live. Or it could be a review of someone else's method and how we've adapted that to our own work. Also, upcoming events might be interesting. So there's different lots and lots of online events that are easy for us to see and recommend, and everyone could attend. But also, if there are any workshops or events that maybe either of us are doing, it might be worth mentioning those. Bit of a plug, sure. Maybe that's something. An anecdote about life. I love these. For example, and I won't go into the meaning of this one, but the kind of thing I'm talking about is the other day a cat turned up in my yard and then was really sick and essentially died in our yard. Anyway, so that kind of anecdote is, I don't want it to be a sad day. It was a bit, but the point is, it made me reflect on who I want to be as a person, and so I had taken her to the vet and these kind of things. So it's not about those events; it's about who you are as a person. And then I think you already touched on it: current topics and current books. Perfect. And one more thing, I'm going to force you to listen to a record that I will play over there because I have no other platform, and that's what I want to do. So shall we start with the book you're reading?
Yes, but you know what? When you mentioned the cat showing up in your backyard, I lost all interest in everything else.
Oh, right.
But we can also go to the book. Yeah, let's go to the book.
I'll do the cat story, and then we'll go to you. But we probably need to do what is sense making definition as well.
All
People
right,
are probably
yes.
wondering, but I think let's do that second. Let's do the cat. Really, the details of the cat turning up isn't that important. But essentially, I went out to hang the clothes, and there's this cat laying there on the grass, and wasn't scared of me or my kids who wanted to come out and say hello and everything. And that's unusual for a cat. And so I thought, okay, cool. I don't really. So here's where the tension started to build. In my head, I'm going, I don't really want to invite a cat to start hanging around my house right now because I need to move very, very shortly in about 4 weeks. Plus, it probably belongs to someone else. So
Wait a minute, Mike. Yeah.
Sorry?
So that is not your cat?
No, it's not my cat. We don't have a cat. We don't have a dog. It just turned up out of nowhere one morning. There's a cat. And it's just laying there, like really, just chill, and was friendly to us and didn't run away, which is unusual for a cat that you don't know, right?
It is.
Yeah. So I thought to myself, so my defenses started coming up. I'm going, okay, the kids are going to get interested in this cat, but it probably belongs to someone else. If I feed it, it's a nice thing to do because it looks hungry. It was skinny and looked a bit poorly. I should care for this cat, but I don't want to invite it to stay. So I had my defenses up for a day. I'm like, no, don't do it because we've got to move and it's going to be a pain and it belongs to someone else. Right. Then the next morning it was still in the backyard. And so now I felt like, what kind of person am I who has been so heartless to not care for this cat who's come to me? It's come to my house. It's asking for help and I've done nothing. What kind of person is doing this? And I thought, this is not the person who I want to be. And even if this cat belongs to someone else or dies or runs away, I should do what is right. And that is to feed him. It was a she in the end, and care for her, irrespective of the outcome. And so I think about this in all things. Lots of events occur, but really what you do in response to those events, whether they're significant or trivial, is really about how you think about yourself, how you model your own expectations and who you want to be. Almost comes first. There's no automatic reaction to a cat turning up to your house. Who you are defines what you do. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to help this cat. And so, well, did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, that's one of the other animals.
All right.
Children. Yeah.
There's something if I could just barge in that. Yeah. And I've noticed this not only from your story but from mine as well. That is it normal that the first time we see something we you put up your defenses and thinking all the things, the cat will hang around in here. And the second day you started reflecting. So do you need that?
I think so. There's two. This is working out perfectly, the conversation. So there's two concepts that I think of. The one is from Wyke, the SenseMaking guy, and I would hold the book up, but it's holding the microphone up. And another one is from Frankl, Viktor Frankl, the guy who wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning. It's a bit depressing, actually. This guy's a psychoanalyst, but it talks about the bad things that happened to him, and then how he dealt with that over time. So what I'm saying is, Wyke says, "How will I know what I think until I say it?" And so that sounds counterintuitive, but you need to be exposed to a stimulus in order to and analyze your response in order to evaluate who you are and what you think and what you have done in that case, and then you can evaluate and change that. But I don't think you can come up with an idea for something if you've never experienced it or never seen it before. So you have to see it and experience it. The Frankl idea is, in all situations, you can be a much better person, a much happier person, and find meaning in your life if you assume you're doing it for the second time.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a little trick, right? So if you are challenged by, okay, cat turns up, and if I first of all remember, okay, the Frankl thing, if I'm doing this the second time, and the second time meaning that I get to do it right now. I did it wrong the first time, but I'm getting an opportunity to now fix up what I did wrong the first time and get it right. And you'll find that you dig a bit deeper and you do the right thing. And so it took me an extra day. The first day she was there, and then the following day. But I feel like, okay, I did the right thing, although I took a little bit longer than I would have liked. But both of those concepts are really about either actually exposing yourself to the thing and then reflecting on it, or pretending you've been exposed to it and reflecting, even though you haven't actually gone past the event. And it's the same concept. So So look, I'm no expert in these areas, but I like to. I'm an enthusiast. I'll say that, and I like to think about these things in my consulting work.
That's really interesting. And would that also, when you mentioned those two, I was wondering what happens if somebody, the beginner's luck thing, that somebody who gets really good results in the first attempt, and as a result didn't really understand, their own stimulus.
Good results, as in good quality reflecting, or a good outcome.
Okay.
Which one do you mean?
Oh, I see.
Because there's a difference, right? Like the cat might live or it might die or whatever. That's kind of irrelevant. What we're really saying is give your fullest, best reflective self as early as possible.
Right.
I think.
Yeah, I think that's.
It's only an issue when you're not. I think beginner's luck. I don't know. Like, maybe beginner's luck only occurs when you've already thought about it in depth or been exposed to it by proxy of someone in your family doing it. So maybe I have or haven't seen enough of that of other people in my family, and so that's why it took me longer. Or someone who would never do it, maybe never saw it, or a very loving family who invites everyone in. The first thing they would do when a cat turns up is come in. That's natural.
Right.
So the whole other thing is, I'm starting to think. So if I jump like 10 steps ahead. Arranged marriage, not so bad. And just bear with me for a sec, because I'd always thought, as a Western, individualistic, merit-based Anglo-Saxon male, that arranged marriage was crazy, right? You should choose, it should be love, and all of this stuff. But I'm starting to unpack that, and the more I read things like Alan Watts and other thinkers of that kind, there's the whole Zen idea and all these sorts of things. We're all connected in a system, and not metaphorically, but literally, we are all connected. So when you join two people, you really are joining the two families, and you become an extension of the family's values and all of those sorts of things. Like, it's no coincidence that you get born the same religion as your parents, right? It's because of you becoming an extension of that thing. So what I'm saying is, those things that happen, the way you would react to a cat turning up, is basically your extension of your network, your family, the organism that you belong to. You're not an individualist just making it up on your own.
Wow, that's really very interesting.
Sorry, did I take it to the other thing I learned in doing podcasting for 3 episodes, and 3, count them, previously, called Design Acid, and we'll put a link. You can go back and laugh at what we're doing over there, was don't make it depressing, because it's really hard to get back out of the hole again. But, hey, should we hear about your book?
Oh, yeah, sure. So, but you really made me think about the arranged marriage. My parents were, and my whole family literally, but we'll talk about it on another day. And the extension of we acting as the whole organism.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's a lot of unhappy stuff that can come from it as well, right? So I'm not saying it's it's cool, but I never thought I would sort of make that flip, and it really is about an organism, right? Yeah,
right. That actually makes me. It's going a bit off topic. That when we are going for job interviews, that's very much like arranged marriage, anyways, right? Because when we are looking at a candidate, we are thinking of not only the candidate, but how the candidate is going to get along with our family or something like that. Is that what we do?
I think so. I think it is exactly like that. Yeah.
All right. So coming back to the book, I've been reading this book called Words That Work. And I have a personal motivation for this, because I was in the research world a lot, so usually my most communication used to be happening through writing then, and writing that has been, revised like several times, so not raw writing. And then I realized that, so when I went to the US, and I was expressing sentiments very much like how I used to do in Barcelona. Like, so if something is negative, we just talk about it. It doesn't mean that I'm actually arguing with the person. We're disagreeing on the topic, and that's so normal to show all the time, very honestly. So while when I was in Thailand, when I was there, it was very much about agreement or not showing, disapproval of any sorts, just trying to blend in and everything. So two opposite cultures. And as a result, later when I went to US, I didn't know which side of the, spectrum to be in. Like, do I express more, or do I stay, hold back more? So that's a continuous struggle. And then the words that I choose also mean something, because, for example, like if I use the wrong kind of word or very academic word, people may already, have this bias against me that, oh, but he talked about this, but he didn't talk about, that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we mean like strategy means so many different things to different people. Mm-hmm. Same as action plan means so many different things to different people. So that's why I just thought that, okay, maybe what if there was a technique that I would choose the right kind of words that I can resonate with the majority of the people. Mm-hmm. So it's not only used in one industry or one group of people, not for eclectic people. So I thought, oh, and then while doing the research, I was thinking, is there already like a shortcut? People must have done research on this. That's how this book came into place. It's Words That Work, written by another Frank.
Mm.
Yeah, Lutz, I would pronounce it in a German way, but I think he's American. And the book, actually, the title under says that it's not what you say, it's what people hear.
Mm-hmm.
And this is correct. Like with some academic research, they proved that 70% of the time people are interpreting what you're saying. So the words, what you said, what you meant, may not be interpreted the same way or received the same way. And that's where a lot of communication is lost or misalignment happens. So here they show with evidence what kind of words to use and what to avoid, using examples of the US politics. So the American politics, Barack Obama's campaign writing. So apparently this person, they have a consultancy practice that they write speeches for politicians for over 30 years. So that's where I am at. I have seen some techniques that I'm not going to share yet. So what do you think?
I think it's great. What people take away, you can hear the exact same words or look at the same picture or whatever it might be, and a completely different story is emerging in your own mind. And this is back to sense making, right? Everyone has their own history and their own bits and pieces and mental models. So it becomes your version. And so that's completely true. So the hack that you're making there is use the ones that make sense to the audience that will help you achieve what you want to achieve, rather than have an arbitrary effect that you can't predict, right? The other way I think about it is people don't remember what you say, and I don't want to contradict the subheading there, but it's similar. I think it's complementary. Is they don't remember what you say, but they remember how you make them feel. And so, to be honest, I ramble on with a lot of anecdotes and garbage and a few nuggets of good information, but generally I try to make people feel welcome and comfortable and just having a chat with me. And I think that's what's important. So look, I haven't read that, so I'm speaking like I know something about it, but I haven't read that one. Looks quite interesting.
That's really good. And you did say something about sense making just now, and that how words and sense making. That's really funny. I hope you gave us some your definition of sense making, or I'm sure you have been researching this topic, so also the established definition. And I'd like to add something, like when we were doing qualitative research in the academic papers, even it's compulsory to describe the introduction chapter as who you are, because we all know that that may have biased our research one way or another. So the introduction chapter is also about describing about yourself, which is very different from science. So me doing in computer science, sometimes we had this, like big disagreement in the department that should we describe who the researcher is, because science should be neutral, and then
do you have a view? I have a view straight away.
I think yes, we should describe, because that time it was not normal for me, because the previous time I didn't have to when I was doing human factors. So, but this I had to, and then I realized why. Because
I think so too, and I relate this back to. I'll do the definition of sense making in a sec, but every single thing that gets said in this conversation, I've got like 3 more stories. So format feels like it's working as long as people want to hear my stupid stories. A couple of years ago, I created a consulting exercise called something narratives. What did we call it? Alignment by storytelling or something like that. I can't remember what it's called, but basically you go through 4 stages of sense making. One articulation of that is what are the facts, feelings, insights, and action. And by the way, I'll put a credit in the notes for this on where I got that from. It's largely from the research from Wick. I get my things from the internet. I don't know the pronunciation. And another guy who created these amazing question cards to help you do individual reflection, Matthias, and I'll put a link to his site as well. But essentially, in that process, we created a template for people in a workshop format to say, okay, what do I see in the research or in the setting that we're trying to evaluate? What am I seeing? What do I think is important, and what should we do about it? And at the top, we added this thing that says, well, who am I? I'm a you can put personal characteristics. In my case, it's like a middle-class, middle-aged white guy. There's so much bias wrapped up in that. And then also that I'm a consultant because I'm external from the companies usually that I work with. And I'm also very, very interested in product and technology. That's kind of my lens, or I'm also almost an anti-technologist if you ask a technology person, but that's kind of my angle. And so that frames everything that I think. So anything that I would put in there is going to have that flavor to it. And in your case, Saqib, very much scientific, very much an academic approach, which is very, very useful in some respects, but worth calling out as a bias as well, right?
Yeah. Yes, very much. By the way, if you're wondering what I was writing, I was just writing the first thing, which I really remember, the cat coming in and your defense is going up, then a reflection happening. I'm just going to put, would you continue that? Can I have it here? So that.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I love that. That's fun. That's cool. If we have time, I don't know, maybe we try to not go too long, but I might talk about what I've got up there.
All right.
But first, we'll do sense making. So probably should have done this at the beginning, but who cares? We'll just see what happens in this whole recording. I'll give you the definition of sense making by Wyke, Sutcliffe, and Obstfield. And I've been really following Wyke. I've got the textbooks, I've got the theories, I've got the audio books, and I'm getting right into it. And it really marries up to what I experience in consulting and in my personal life. I think actually I've come to sense making personally because we're calling this thing as a working title, by the way, is what's it called, Saqib? What the hell is happening?
What the hell? Yeah. At the
moment,
what the hell is this? What the hell is this? Yes.
What the hell is this? Which is kind of the question that I ask myself all the time, like just in personal life or going to the shops or finding things or organizations especially, like what the hell is going on? What is this? And so if I can answer that and I help other people answer that, that kind of for me is sense making. Okay, so the textbook example is sense making, or sense-making is a process by which people give meaning to their collective experiences. They're individual experiences, but collective as well. And that's interesting, giving meaning, right? I'll continue. It has been defined as the ongoing retrospective development of plausible images that rationalize what people are doing. So that's also interesting, and I'll come back to that. Concept was introduced by blah, blah, blah. Okay. What's interesting about that is you do things and then you reflect on them, exactly like what's on Sakib's wall there about the cat coming up.
Yeah.
Defensive first, and then the thing about, well, how will I know what I think until I see what I say, or in this case, see my actions? For me, I take this body of study and practice and use it in the following sort of areas. I use sense making as a word to describe a few things. The activities and process by which people frame decisions before they make them. So this is really important. We think of organizations as decision-making factories, and everything is about prioritization and decision frameworks. But there's a bunch of sense-making that's occurred before decision-making, and I'm very interested in that space because it actually has way more impact, and it's a little bit more human and nebulous, requires human intuition and judgment. So I'm interested in that area. Second point is the thing I'm describing when I say sense making is the intentional structuring being designed of organizations, which is people, process, and products, so that they may continually sense and create meaning from its interactions with the world. Now, this is about how do we do the sense making not just as one person, but as an organization. And it's a really interesting space because people are saying these days things like resilience, mindfulness, agility, and I don't know if most of the time they really know what that means at an organizational level. At an individual level, some of those mean something, like resilience. Okay, do meditation, don't burn yourself out, blah, blah, blah. But that's not what we're talking about. We're really talking about how we structure the whole organization to be resilient and sensitive to the world. And the last thing I would say is I mean when I say sense making is the idea that humans are the main instrument in sensing, whilst also, are the main instrument of sensing, as mentioned in the previous points, whilst also being the primary reason an organization exists. And therefore, a human-centered approach is fundamental to both the both goal setting and structuring operations. So it's almost like there's this adage that I hear leadership talk about, we're trying to, we've got goals and missions and structures and things to do in the business, but it's all about people. It's all relationships. And what's embodied in that is that we've got this goal, and relationships with people are the method to get to that outcome. And that's wrong. We need to flip that around completely and say, no, the goal is humans and their interactions with the world as the number one goal. People turning up and participating in communities, workplace, or organizations is the goal. The socialization that occurs, the community engagement, that organism that we're building beyond ourselves, the arranged marriage conversation from before, that's the goal. Everything else is just this Rube Goldberg machine in order to get that. And so humans are the key because of the human-led sense-making, and also the goal. And all that organizational stuff, capital, goals, making products, doing software delivery, consulting, it's all just mostly a Ponzi, but kind of a Rube Goldberg machine in the middle between humans doing sense-making and humans receiving the goal. So that's what I mean when I say sense-making. Sorry, it was a bit long.
Oh, no, that's really, really good. Can I just jump in? Because, when you said that, described it today, I just feel that I know you more. There are so many times, I'll be honest, that I was thinking, what the hell is this guy thinking about? By the way, this is my favorite quote now. It is so honest. What the hell is this? Because that
what the hell is this?
sets the mind to actually make some sense and do some action. If I don't say this, means I'm not ready to make sense. So I'm gonna use it at least for myself.
Oh, that's good. I hadn't thought of it like that. I had thought of it as categorization or a label for what we're doing. But you've described it as like a pivot point, right? So only if you're asking, and this can be for others as well, only if you're asking, what the hell is this? Are you ready to receive? So it's about the vase being empty, right? And being able to receive wisdom.
Yes.
That whole thing. We can do Ram Dass another time if you want to.
Yes. Okay. And then thinking about when you were describing that humans are the main instrument of sense making, it actually reminds me of so many things. Like, now we use a lot of data and insights, like the coronavirus going on, and the Premier of New South Wales and the Chief Health Scientist, Dr. Kerry Grant. I really like Kerry Chan, sorry, not Grant.
Cary Grant. Yeah, nice.
Yes. Carrie Chan. Okay. So then what happened is that, but when I realized that great, eloquent speakers like Winston Churchill, they didn't need data analytics or insights to prove their point. He could just make sense of how the people are feeling and also gave the leadership through his storytelling. So, and I clearly think that he made sense of people or the citizens, using their senses as an input to his human instincts, which worked as, humans are the instruments of sense making. And then he could answer that in the right way so that, the people felt, what do you call, comfort and...
Well, that's interesting. They feel comfort and all of those things, but there's another concept that we definitely won't touch today, but we'll introduce in at some stage, this idea of plausibility. And so this is again from the Wick.
Yeah.
Stuff. And he talks about plausibility of the information coming in to you. So if you can't make build a plausible story of what's going on, you'll reject that information, or it'll be too chaotic or something like that. So I think that eloquent speaking that you talk about is yes, it's storytelling and honing in on human sense making and the feelings, with a goal of plausibility before that rational probability becomes a thing, because that's almost secondary. So there's this book that comes to mind. When you talk about the human stuff there's this book that comes to mind that I read last year and I need to come back to, also called SenseMaking by this guy. And he basically has a good rip on design thinking, by the way, which I really love, because that's something that's a bit, I think, out of hand these days. And I've done all these notes in here. I'll look at all that. But basically he's saying the human approach and deep knowledge in a domain is where deep experience and touch points in a domain is kind of where sense making occurs. You can't just walk into a room and do a design thinking exercise and suddenly solve a problem. Real problem solving comes from the deep understanding of the problem space, and that's a slow human act. Anyway, so maybe we'll talk more about that another time.
Okay. One more thing, and this is really, I'm curious about, because so many people sometimes think that sense making has to happen and then there will be an action, as if it's a linear. What is your opinion? Is it like sense making action happens simultaneously, or?
Well, Wyke says, and I believe it's constant, right? So we are constantly reevaluating. It might make sense one day, then new information comes in and you need to bring that in and do an active process of sense making of the new information with the old, and make judgments about whether it's plausible anymore. That's kind of how I think about it. And then that's partly reflecting on your own actions, but also then forming the ability to make new actions as well. So it's ongoing. It's almost like, I don't know how many developer type people or product people are listening to this, probably a lot, because that's my community a bit. Are probably thinking about dual track delivery, which is a constant discovery phase and a constant delivery of value, usually in the form of software delivery. And so you don't stop discovering. You don't do discovery and then delivery. That's if you're doing that now, stop doing that. You need to tilt it like this and do a little bit of discovery and a little bit of delivery constantly. And the sense making piece is almost a component of, or maybe lives wrapped around the discovery, or wraps around the whole thing, but it's woven all the way through, to be honest, because it's at the human level, but it's also, as an organization, you need to structure for it.
All right.
So, sorry, that was a long answer. Short answer, yes.
That sounds really good. By the way, can sense making be done while listening to music or records? Or
that's one. You're smart. That's a good question. So if I'm trying to sense make and get all the things to come together, like if I'm writing a document or something like that, I can't listen to music with words because it interferes. However, I'll listen to some sort of relatively high energy electronic music that will keep the pace going. So it lets me fall into the rhythm that I need to sort of work the things and get them to all fall down into the funnel into some sort of order. But I think music and art of all kinds really sets the right tone for different types of experience, and sense making being a huge one. Now, thank you for that segue. If you don't have anything else, I'm going to play a record over here and then we'll close. Let's do that. For those of you who grew up watching Sesame Street, this is this is my stuff.
Oh.
And it doesn't really make any sense to do with this conversation at all, and I'm okay with that. I'm kind of just going to play something that I think is amazing, and it's not C is for cookie. It's this fantastic B-side that came on this record, and I had to scrounge around, and this cost me like $100 online, which I guess isn't that much for a fairly rare record, but it's got the Pinball number count, which is sung by the Pointer Sisters in the 70s. And I just love the sound of that 70s music. And I think it's a great soundtrack that goes along with sense making and feeling the soul of, humans being the instrument of sense making. There's a soul to that. And I want to keep that in all that I do. And by the way, all of my most favored books are basically 1970s allegories. That's one of them. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I think I gave all my copies away because I want other people to read it, but it's all 1970s. Now, I think people were taking a lot of drugs at that time, and I'm not against that, but anyway, I'm just going to play this record. You probably haven't heard it. If you grew up watching Sesame Street, I'm hoping it brings back memories, and there's something to do with sense making with those memories and emotions that it brings up. For me, it really did that, and that's why I bought this record.
Nice.
And we can listen to it all day, but I'll probably end up with a copyright infringement. And I think there's a link I can share with for you guys on that one, and you can enjoy it all day at home. It's on YouTube.
That's really nice. I think that's what I'm going to do after I get off this call. And
any closing remarks for you, Shakir?
So I think the closing remarks are about. Sorry, I got off mute because we're preparing lunch. So the closing remarks are that we have opened up a huge number of topics here. So I definitely, while you're putting the record on, I also put the subtitle that it's not what people hear, it's how you make people feel.
Mm-hmm.
My bad handwriting. And I think it will be really interesting to know how to do sense making with examples.
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference between organization sense making and individual sense making?
Cool.
Organizations as organisms, amazing concept as well.
It's funny how that word is so similar, right? It's not an accident, right?
Right.
Mm.
Yes. And do you have something to close to? Because those are things I would definitely be digging in.
Yeah, I think next time what we could do is talk about that storytelling narratives method, which is a consulting method. I'll also share a link to Matthias, my friend, who has these reflection cards, which you can do all kinds of reflection and sense making at an individual level with this deck of cards. And then I think we can also talk about some more formal organization-wide methods that we can unpack and that are really useful, especially in a time of COVID. By the way, we didn't get into any of that stuff. And then we can do that next time and talk about, okay, how would you structure the organization to be more resilient, more mindful, and all of those things without the buzzwords and without let's make everyone agile and all this garbage. Let's just get to the real heart of it and using humans to make that real. So in short, I've got a few methods. Maybe we queue those up for next time and do a bit of a vote between us on what we cover at the beginning.
Oh yes, I did forget that. As COVID, a lot depends on the humans now, the future state of COVID, because there are strategies in place and everything, especially social distancing and how to stay. And I was really thinking that it depends a lot on how we can change our behaviors. And there's some interesting behavior change theories and practices that I have researched with from persuasive systems design. I think I would like to talk about that as well the next time. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I've got the fog model. I think I sent you a text saying, hey, I've got some because for me, what's missing from that is the plausibility and the probability. It assumes there's a certainty state to the fog model. So without any academic experience, I'm going to unpack that and change it and break it. And the other one is no, can't remember. Had that. Oh, anyone heard of theory of constraints? Okay, if you've heard of theory of constraints and you love it or hate it or whatever, it's basically DevOps at the organizational level. It's very similar to the Toyota way. Some of the concepts involved in there as well. It's basically lean in practice. There's this theory of there's this concept of Herbie. There's this story in, again, 1970s allegories. This is written in the 1980s. But it's the whole story of theory of constraints is told as a story of one man's challenge, and I love it. But anyway, there's this Boy Scout named Herbie. He's a bit slower than walking. They're hiking, and he's slower than all the other boys, and he's lagging behind. It's annoying. So basically, the whole idea of theory of constraints is put the bottleneck at the front, and so they put Herbie at the front. But my thing is, well, what about sense making? How do we organizationally all make sense at the same speed? Do we all need to slow down to Herbie's speed of sense making? And would that work? Or do we need to flip that on its head and get everyone up to speed? And that's another concept. I have no idea what's going to happen off the back of that, but I've been thinking about who and what would our Herbie of sense making look like. And that only works if you know about theory of constraints. If you don't, I'll put a link, 13 hours worth of audio book, go for it.
That sounds amazing.
So I think that's about it. Thanks for the wall. Maybe we can share the notes that went on the wall.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I've got some notes here as far as links to various things.
Yes, that sounds really good.
And most of all, we don't know what we're doing here. So if you've got ideas and you want to give feedback on format or content or which of the bits here you thought made sense and didn't make sense, just tell us. Length as well. This has gone probably 45 minutes, so that's probably a bit longer than I would have liked, but let me know. Any other comments, we're really happy to hear them, and if you never want to hear from us again, that's fine too. That's it. You're off to lunch?
Yes, that's it. We stop. Okay.
I think so. No, we haven't.
Okay, yeah. I like the keyhole thing and everything. But again, I also have that note. The thing that now you have to, express all the things through this keyhole. Think of especially this, digital way of communication. And that was amazing too. I did put that note.
Yeah, that's good. I think I've tried to set out this room as though you're just sitting here with me. And so I can just jump around and say, oh, well, listen to a record, come and look at what's on the board here or whatever. That's kind of working for me. Trying to get it all through in the digital and put my notes there while I'm talking and typing at the same time. That for me is crazy. I don't know how well it works for anyone, to be honest, even if you've got multiple screens, because there's still no end. Anyway.
Yes. Oh, no, this is amazing. I think this is great. Yeah. Our goodies. We will cut this part out, right? Later.
No, let's leave it in. This is
really?
We're going to lunch. We've got keyhole. Give us feedback. That's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.